a basilisk by piercing it with his spear. The creature's poison seeped up the spear and killed both horse and rider. Remind you of anything, Snake?
Nuclear deterrence.
Bingo. Kill it, and you die along with it. Your hands are bound. I wanted Peace Walker to be like that.
You should know that people aren't that rational. Sometimes people do things that don't make sense, even when they know they're going to die. Or maybe it's because of that.
Maybe you're right. But that's exactly what I don't understand. Peace Walker contains an assembly of 2 AI pods. One of them is the Mammal Pod, which Dr. Strangelove developed. The other's the Reptile Pod, which is mine.
What's the difference?
The Reptile Pod is the Attitude Control AI. If it's destroyed, Peace Walker grinds to a halt. The Mammal Pod is responsible for making the decisions regarding nuclear retaliation, reflex, and thought. One is the brainstem and cerebellum, the other the cerebrum.
So, the one that houses the will of the boss
would be the Mammal Pod. We call it the Reptile Pod for a reason. The parts of our brains that govern basic life and reflex developed ages ago, when our ancestors were still reptiles.
We were reptiles?
Well, only at one stage of our evolution. The theory was proposed by the neuroscientist Paul MacLean. The reptile brain corresponds to the brainstem and basal ganglia in our brain. The Reptile Pod also incorporates the functions of the cerebellum.
So basically, it's the deep parts of the brain.
Dr. Strangelove came up with the name. The part of our brain that developed after we became mammals is responsible for high-level brain functions.
Such as?
Such as intelligence, judgment, even love.
That's high level, all right.
Location-wise, the mammal brain is on the outside of the reptile brain. The cerebral cortex is part of it. I think it's very telling that Dr. Strangelove named her pod Mammal. It's almost like she wants it to be more than just an advanced AI. What she really wants is for it to have a mind of its own. Snake, how much do you know about the U.S. Homeland Air Defense Network?
I don't know much about what goes on up in the sky. What I do know is that NORAD tracks Santa Claus on its radar.
Nice one. I didn't know you were a comedian, too.
Huh? No, I'm serious. It's true. NORAD tracks his... Listen to me. Every December they set up a hotline and...
Okay, I get it.
He's real, I tell you. He used to bring me presents and...
Okay, Snakey. As all good little boys know, keeping tabs on Santa Claus is a very important job for NORAD. But they also have another mission, the one they were created for. And the system they set up for that has been hijacked by Coldman.
You mean Peace Walker's fake data transmissions?
NORAD's early warning system is composed of DSP satellite-mounted infrared sensors and an array of surveillance radar stations across North America. The network sends out warnings to NORAD at Cheyenne Mountain, where the data undergoes human evaluation. Peace Walker, on the other hand, has to make its retaliation decisions autonomously. So it's set up to automatically receive the same data as NORAD through covert channels. Those channels were also used on the test platform to telemeter the AI's decision-making. Peace Walker reversed the system to transmit a fake warning about incoming nuclear missiles outside the usual exercise schedule. I mean, The system could have used better safeguarding. Nobody's going to argue with that. But cracking the AI? That seemed unimaginable. And you can see what happened.
What up, James and Salute? Yeah, I'm streaming early because I went to bed early yesterday because I was too tired from all the walking around on C2E2. I'm pretty sure there'll be some comedy relief in Phantom Pain. I don't know if you'll see anything about Santa. He might. You never know. By the way, Salute. 2 other people got fired by Naughty Dog. What you gonna say about that? I'm just letting you know. Just laugh. While I slept. I'll do that next time.
Hey, Doc, what was that you were smoking in the lab? It looked like a cigarette, but it wasn't lit.
Oh, it's an electronic cigarette. I designed it myself. Pretty neat, huh?
Electronic cigarette.
Yep, a liquid in the filter that turns into vapor, and you inhale the microparticles.
So that was vapor.
I'd actually rather be smoking normal cigarettes, but not in that room. The smoke would wreck the precision equipment in there, ruin all its wiring. But the vapor is just steam. It doesn't contain tar or anything like that. So I can smoke it in the lab with no worries.
Nice.
Want to try one?
Nah, I'll stick with cigars.
Yeah, but...
I don't like imitations. The real thing's always better.
Okay. But you know, sooner or later, smoking's going to become very unfashionable across the world. It hurts you and those around you. Electronic cigarettes might not seem so bad then.
Yeah, when that happens, I'll think about it. You said your dad was involved in the Manhattan Project, right?
Yeah?
And you think that's why you can't walk?
I don't know. Actually, you know, probably not. So far, nobody's found evidence that exposure to radiation in parents causes genetic defects in children, except for those exposed in the womb. Epidemiologically speaking, anyway.
That's the conclusion of the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission.
Right. The ABCC commenced its study immediately after the war, and it's still ongoing.
Even now, 30 years later.
The effects of radiation exposure last a long time. I'm guessing it'll be another 10 years before we get a real verdict on whether it affects genes. Granted, it's the most massive study anybody's ever done. But that's really all it is, a study. The ABCC brought in bomb victims and ran tests on them, but they didn't treat them.
Really? Them too, huh?
At any rate, that's what my father made me believe when I was growing up.
Maybe it was tough for your dad to explain. Ever think of that?
Yeah, maybe. But this is my problem now, Snake. I have to face the nukes head on, whether I like it or not. My creations are being used for the wrong purposes. The onus is on me to stop it somehow. Help me, Snake.
Man, you just don't wanna... so everything's okay with Naughty Dog. Everything is perfectly fine. They're not having any problems. It's okay, so we keep thinking that. Keep thinking that everything is okay.
Hey, as long as I'm here at Mother Base, why not assign me to the R&D team? You could use a guy like me.
Glad to have you on board. I'm sure Kaz is, too.
Once I've got the necessary materials and design specs together, I should be able to start building you that bipedal weapon platform. Nothing would make me happier than for my research to help put a stop to Peace Walker.
So this Dr. Strangelove was at NASA?
Yeah. Well, actually, Strangelove left for DARPA not long after I joined.
And then the two of you ended up back together doing research in Costa Rica.
Not exactly together. We coordinated on a few things, but the research projects themselves were separate from each other. We had it worked out so that Dr. Strangelove handled the mammal pod, Peace Walker's cerebrum, while I did the rest.
That letter, something to do with your research?
Huh? No, it's yeah, it's a report. Research findings.
Research findings? Anything in there we could use against Peace Walker?
Nothing. Nothing at all. Just don't read it, okay? Promise me you won't? Did you, give that letter to Dr. Strangelove?
No.
Why not? I gave it to you for a reason. It's highly important information.
Sorry. I didn't exactly have an opportunity to play postman.
Well, next time you see her, you make sure she gets it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Better for you if she doesn't.
Snake!
What?
Tell me you didn't read the letter.
No.
You did!
I mean, you never know what kind of information could affect the outcome of an operation, right?
So you read the letter, after I specifically told you not to.
What do you expect people to do when you tell them not to read something?
I thought I knew you, Snake. I thought I could trust you. But now I see I was wrong.
Look, I'm sorry, but I just don't get what you see in her.
Well, I wouldn't expect a barbarian who opens other people's private correspondence to understand.
Fine then. Deliver it yourself.
Huh? What? No, no way. I could never...
You've got a long way to go, Huey.
You ever see the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Can't say I have.
Fantastic flick. The outer space special effects are incredible enough, but the depiction of AI is what really stands out.
There's an AI?
Yeah, a spacecraft pilot AI called HAL. It plays a major role in the story. Dr. Strangelove loves it too. Did I ever tell you about the time we first met up in Costa Rica?
No.
You know how she hates men, right? So we hadn't seen each other since NASA, and we just weren't hitting it off. Until we started talking about HAL. And then she started going off. The way she talked about it was so intellectual. The way she analyzed every plot detail, how passionate she was about the AI. It made me fall for her all over again. You know what? Here's to Hal for bringing her and me closer together. You should ask her about 2001 too. Then you'll understand just how amazing she is.
Amazing, huh?
Hal. Now there's a good name.
That Hal Emmerich reference. Is it a last?
The pupa increases its mobility by using compressed air to hover its rear section. It moves by means of its treads and boosters. Those boosters also provide the propulsion needed for high-speed movement.
So if I take out the boosters, it won't be able to charge.
Right. I suppose you could also avoid its attacks by lying down beneath it. The pupa is also equipped with electrical shock units. It uses these devices, they look like lightning rods, to direct discharge.
Guess I should pull the plug on those too.
Good idea. What else? Well, As with all AI machines, you can incapacitate the entire unit by taking out the AI itself. If you can get the hatch open and climb inside, you can pull out the memory boards. Lights out AI. We may be able to use those boards for ourselves. If you can, try and get inside the AI pod and have a crack at it. You won't be able to do that until you've damaged it enough to stop it from moving first.
Got it. Usual tactics first, then.
Being an unmanned vehicle, the Chrysalis can perform extreme G-force maneuvers that standard aircraft can't. It'll be difficult to counterattack once it's coming at you. I should mention that it's also equipped with a railgun.
A what?
A weapon that fires rounds using electromagnetic force in lieu of gunpowder.
Wait, an electric weapon?
Not exactly. The rounds themselves are conventional shells. It creates force by running an electric current through a magnetic field. Fleming's left-hand rule. Didn't they teach you that at school?
Not at mine.
Oh. Anyway, as the railgun uses electromagnetic force, it needs to charge before firing. Once you see it starting to charge, take immediate evasive action. Also, as with the pupa, destroying the AI will put the unit out of commission. Do enough damage and it'll have to land. Use that opportunity to get in the AI pod. Wait too long and it'll start to repair itself. Be sure to shoot the hatch the moment it lands.
I think I can handle that.
During development, I had trouble figuring out how to handle the cocoon's excess heat. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but the radiators are most likely its weakest points. They're not heavily armored, as heat wasn't dissipating properly.
Where are they?
There are multiple radiators on the upper and lower sections. Just look for the exhaust fumes. The only thing is, the upper radiators typically aren't exposed. You should probably shoot for the lower ones first. You could move under its body to access the lower ones, but the cocoon is capable of vertical movement, so be careful not to get crushed. Watch out for missiles and hedgehogs, too.
Hedgehogs? Anti-submarine multiple spigot mortars?
I adapted the technology for use as a surface weapon. Both the missiles and hedgehogs take time to load, though. It can't fire a hedgehog until the lamp comes on. As for the missiles, watch for the way the hatches move.
That'll be my chance to get close.
When the hatches open, out come the missiles.
That was some escape you made from Strangelove's lab.
Security inside was not so tight. The door to my room was locked from the outside, of course. But she took off the blindfold at bath time, so she could wash my hair.
Pretty luxurious treatment for a prisoner.
Wasn't it? She wouldn't undo the handcuffs, but she washed my body for me instead. And with such gentle care.
Why'd you run away? Didn't she say you could go home in a month? If your escape attempt failed, you'd be in greater danger than before.
I was supposed to be giving a presentation on the distribution of Costa Rican bird species at a conference. The date was approaching quickly. So, I pretended I had to use the toilet and made my escape. I found an ID card and searched everywhere for my equipment and my tape. But a soldier saw me. It was a miracle I managed to get away. There was no time to find the tape. I do not care about the conference. I am lucky enough to still be in one piece.
You bounce back quick.
You don't?
Not sure. I try not to dwell too much on the past, but...
Then don't. There is no point. I'm so glad to be out of there. I never felt safe, you know?
Tell me about it.
Well, I think she's interested in women. And I think she took a fancy to me.
Oh, well, that's,
Besides, it is much nicer here.
was it just the two women in the lab?
Most of the time, oui.
And one of them, you only heard her voice, right?
Yes, that is correct. Such a wonderful voice. It sent chills up my spine.
What was the other woman like?
Ah, don't even think about it. She's not the slightest interest in men.
No, it's part of my mission to...
Only teasing. Let me think. I believe she was in her 30s. Pretty, with a good sense of style, but austere in her tastes. A very unusual woman.
And she was doing research on AI.
AI? So that is what she was up to. You know, she did say something interesting. That people should not be going into space. That it is too dangerous.
An automated control system for rockets, then.
She said something about wanting to get closer to her dying wish. I think she must have been talking about an old lover.
Lover? You mean another woman?
My, aren't we curious about women and other women? You want to hear the terrible things she tried to do to me?
That's not what I meant.
It's all right. You can be honest.
You two seem to get along awfully well together.
No, not at all.
I think you're hiding something.
Never mind. Aren't you supposed to be looking for the Quetzal? Here, I'll demonstrate its call for you.
I knew it. Let's go over this one more time. First, I need an ID card to get into the lab.
That is correct. From the outside, it looks like any other room. But on the inside, it is a state-of-the-art research facility.
And your ID card got taken away from you by some guy in an orange jacket.
Exactly. I had a Quetzal singing nearby. It has not been that long since it happened.
It could be tricky if he's out on patrol, but if he's a stationary sentry, you don't think the Quetzal's moved?
Its nest is probably nearby. I do not think it will go away anytime soon.
Good. I'll get on looking for that soldier.
If you forget what it sounds like, I will do the call for you again. Just give me a call anytime you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, I'll do that. Let me get this straight. You were in Costa Rica as a bird watcher?
Yes, I was. Not for pleasure, though. I am a researcher, after all. I am studying the distribution of Latin American bird species. With today's compact cassette tape recorders, even a woman like me can carry her recording equipment by herself. But it was a mistake to come alone.
Even so, there sure are a lot of wild birds in Costa Rica.
Aren't there? Over 800 different species. Said to be more than 10% of all living bird species on Earth. How many can you name, Mr. Ornithologist?
Hey, I was just trying not to scare you.
You should at least have a basic knowledge of Costa Rica. How about this? I will give you a thorough education, Mr. First-time Ornithologist.
Okay. Start by telling me about the Quetzal. Cecile, what's that machine you said you used to make those recordings of yours? Cassette, something or other.
A cassette recorder, or a cassette denske, as they say in Japan.
Yeah, that. What is that thing, anyway?
A portable recording device released last year by a Japanese company, Sony. It uses compact cassettes, making it far lighter than open-reel machines. It still weighs 5 kilograms, but the exercise won't kill me.
Ha!
It is user-friendly, too. All the buttons have markings on them, allowing you to operate it without looking at it. Can you imagine missing the shot of a lifetime simply because you blinked?
Oh, that would be devastating. But where'd they come up with Denske? Sounds like a Japanese name.
Allow me to field that one.
Kaz?
Densuke is a nickname that comes from the name of an old manga character.
Oh. Was he some recorder, too?
Don't give me that. Recording atmospheric noises is an exhilarating art. There's nothing like capturing the real world in action on tape. It's just like taking pictures with a camera, only with a microphone instead of a viewfinder.
Oh, sure.
Listen to a tape with your eyes closed, and the scene just bursts to life in your mind's eye. Tell him, Cecile.
Absolutely. When I listen to the sounds of the birds in my apartment, it is like I am back in the forest, where I recorded them.
See? She's a Parisienne. She knows what's chic.
If you say so.
And what do you like to record, Monsieur Miller?
Me? Steam locomotives, no question. The roar of the engine, the throaty steam whistle. More animal than machine. Don't get me started. Steam locomotives are a dying breed in Japan. I wouldn't mind going back for a bit and making some new tapes while I still can.
You are less civilized than I thought.
Less civilized?
I detest those beasts. The noise frightens off all the birds. Then there is the smoke. I much prefer the peace and quiet of the forest.
Cecile, wait. That came out wrong.
Sure it did.
All right. What do you want to know about Quetzals?
Give me the basics. Something that'll help me find one.
Okay then. First of all, as I'm sure you remember, the Quetzal's wings and back are emerald green, a dazzling blend of viridian fading into blue. Its belly is brilliant red, and its tail feathers are white. Such a gorgeous bird. Also, the male has 2 long decorative feathers, but only during breeding season. Among birds, males are usually more beautiful than females.
Like a peacock's tail.
Yes, just like that. It is interesting to note that while their bodies are only 40 centimeters long, many quetzals reach over a meter in length when you include their decorative plumage. Quetzals typically build their nests by making holes in dead trees with their beaks, about 3 to 4 meters above the ground. They are omnivorous and eat everything from nuts to lizards.
Where can I find one?
Their habitat stretches across the entire tropical cloud forest. You may end up having to rely on its song to find one.
Good to know.
I will do an imitation. Listen closely.
Hey, not bad.
Shall I do a chicken next? Cluck, 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 buck, buck, buck.
No thanks. That's enough.
Are you sure? How about a monkey?
Yeah, don't need that either.
Oh, all right then.
Are you hyper? Oh my god, I'm so sorry, bro. I'm not gonna shove my fucking fist up your anus. Come back. I'm sorry. Oh, I just chased him down.
You said you could do a monkey call.
Yes. Want to hear it?
Yeah, I won't be able to get it off my mind until I do.
All right. Here it is then.
That's pretty good.
I can do others too, like a sheep, a pig.
Yeah? Wow. What about a pig? That's uncanny.
Oh, I can do a rabbit as well.
A rabbit? Rabbits make noises?
Certainly, but they are very faint, so perhaps only someone who has owned one would recognize them.
I see. So, what do they sound like?
Listen very carefully.
Okay. Seriously? Rabbits sound like that?
I assure you they do. Listen again.
Never heard a rabbit do that before.
They do. I swear. Costa Rica is the home to many hummingbirds as well. The people here call them colibri.
Colibri, huh?
Hummingbirds are the world's smallest birds. Although they can vary from species to species, Most are around 10 centimeters in length, and the smallest no more than 5. It is amazing to think that something so small can still be a fully developed bird.
I think a bird that tiny would get mistaken for a bug.
Actually, they are often mistaken for sphinx moths. The little darlings feed on flower nectar, and their beaks are long and thin to help them drink up the nectar. They beat their wings far faster than any other bird. The smallest ones over 70 times a second. Can you imagine?
What for?
They hover in midair while they suck their nectar. They can even fly straight backwards.
Hovering. Like a helicopter. That's why Amanda and her unit called that chopper Colibri.
I think it is an insult to the birds to give their names to weapons. Don't you?
Don't ask me. Ask the birds how they feel about it.
Have you ever heard of the mannequins?
Never.
Unbelievable! You came all the way to Costa Rica and you've never even heard of them?
I didn't come here to look at...
Mannequins are known for their beautiful courtship dances. The orange-colored mannequin is said to live on the Pacific side, the white-bearded mannequin on the Caribbean side, and the long-tailed mannequin is in the Central Basin. The long-tailed mannequins are especially distinctive.
What's special about them?
First, each young male picks an older male to teach him how to dance. Then, teachers and pupils all get in a group and dance for the females. However, only the teachers get paired off with females. The pupils practice their technique for 7 years before striking out on their own and finding their own pupils.
I guess it takes time to get good at anything. Whether it's dancing or soldiering.
Mannequins always have plenty to eat. Apparently, that is why they have so much free time to practice dancing.
Unlike us, obviously.
Another well-known bird of the cloud forest is the three-wattled bellbird.
Wattled? What the hell's a wattle?
It is just like your beard, Snake.
What?
It is a piece of flesh that hangs down from its chin. Kind of like whiskers, but not made of hair.
A hanging piece of flesh.
Oui, and it only grows on males.
Nothing more important to a man than his beard. So, these birds are in the cloud forest too?
They are normally found in the lowland rainforests, but they migrate into the highland cloud forests during breeding season. What the three-wattled bellbird is best known for, though, is its loud call. It makes these metallic bong and ding sounds, hence the name bellbird. It hardly sounds like a bird at all. Even an expert bird caller like me cannot do it justice.
Oh, it doesn't sound like I'll be mistaking it for a quetzal.
Do you know the national bird of Costa Rica? Honestly, and you call yourself an ornithologist? The national bird of Costa Rica is the clay-colored robin. It's a plain-looking brown bird found throughout the country.
Why'd they make it the national bird then? Are there all kinds of better-looking birds like the quetzal?
The clay-colored robin has the most exquisite song. And I think it is part of the Costa Rican national character to choose a bird everyone knows and loves over prettier ones.
Somehow these people don't strike me as being very Latin.
Speaking as an ornithologist, I am rather happy with that choice. Not all birds have to be pretty. Oh, and just so you know, the quetzal is the national bird of Guatemala. The scarlet macaw and the great green macaw are also representative birds of Costa Rica. Macaws are a type of parrot, enormous, stately birds.
Macaw. I think I've heard that name somewhere before.
But of course you have. You are an ornithologist, no?
Stop it.
So, tell me, where do macaws live in Costa Rica today?
Oh, come on now.
I am only teasing you. Macaws live not in the cloud forests, but in the rainforests on the Pacific side of Costa Rica. In the past, they were a common sight all across the country. But lately, the population has decreased dramatically. One possible cause is the pesticide sprayed to facilitate large-scale banana cultivation.
Evicted from their own land, huh?
Thankfully, conservation efforts have been gaining some momentum lately.
Never heard the name Cosima before. Then again, I don't know many people from France. Is it a common name?
No, not that common. But Wagner's second wife was named Cosima Francesca Gaetana Wagner.
Huh.
You know, Kojima is a common last name in Japan.
Kaz?
It's just funny how, I'm part Japanese and Cecile's middle name is so close to Kojima. It feels like destiny unfolding.
You think so?
Oui, oui. That's a beautiful name you have. Cecile Cosima Caminades. Wait a second. Cecile Cosima Caminades. Cosima Caminades. Hey, that's close to
Close to what?
your name. It sounds almost like the sentence Kojima Caminandes in Japanese.
And what does it mean, s'il vous plaît?
Well, kami is the word for God in Japanese. Nandesu. Well, it's hard to explain, but placed after God, it would turn the sentence into is God.
Okay. So?
Kojima is God. Cecile's name is a message. I don't believe it. Kojima is God. Kojima is God.
Kaz? How are you enjoying Mother Base so far?
Ah, it is wonderful.
Good to hear. I was worried someone as cultured as you would find the plant a little uncouth.
Uncouth? Ah, you've got albatross, and frigate birds, and terns, and tropic birds. Seabirds I have never had a chance to see in France.
Oh, well, great.
Sorry, I know I should not spend all day chasing birds. Is there anything I can help with?
I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure what I could ask you to do.
Well, I'm certainly not cut out to shoot a gun.
Cecile, where'd you learn to move through the forest like that? The birds weren't scared of you at all.
Becoming one with the forest is the very essence of bird watching. They want to behave naturally if they sense a human nearby. And that can really affect your observations.
I see. Kind of like scouting then.
I am also good at spotting birds from a distance, tracking them based on the tiniest of clues, and being aware of my surroundings.
You're starting to sound even more like a scout.
The only way to find a bird is to think like a bird. Now, think you can find a place for me?
Yeah. Did you live in Paris your whole life before coming here?
Ah, yes. It is my favorite city. Paris is the world capital of art and culture. It has the latest fashion, the best cuisine, and the most elegant, refined people. The beauty of the Champs-Élysées at night is almost unearthly. The name comes from Elysium, the name of paradise in Greek mythology. Heaven, in other words.
Must be nice for some people. Not for me.
Are you saying the cultured life does not appeal to you?
I'm saying I never had a chance to lead one. Not that it appealed to me anyway.
You prefer war?
I don't like war. Life outside heaven just suits me better.
That is a hard way to live. But if you do ever come to France, I will show you around Paris. Then you will see what heaven on earth is really like.
Heaven on earth, huh? The only image I have of France is the Foreign Legion.
Ah, that is how you view France?
What do the French think of them?
It is a difficult question. We normally don't think about it so much.
Well, critics claim it forces foreigners to take on the most dangerous missions, so French citizens won't get hurt.
You are right. That probably had something to do with why it was created. But I understand that along with service comes benefits, such as French citizenship and permanent residency. Those who join are all given an equal chance, regardless of race, religion, education, social status, or national origin. So it can be a godsend for people from poor countries.
A way for the have-nots to live a decent life. I guess that's not so different from MSF. There's one other image I have of France. The national anthem.
Ah, La Marseillaise. Not everyone is a fan, of course.
The whole, to arms, citizens. May an impure blood water our furrows thing, eh?
The song was composed right after the French Revolution. Fearing what the tide of the revolution represented, the ruling classes in neighboring countries applied all kinds of pressure on the young government. La Marseillaise became the anthem of the volunteer armies that sought to protect constitutional rule against that pressure.
And they couldn't do that without armed force.
Oui, I agree, some parts are a little belligerent. But we must not forget that if it were not for them, France would not be the democracy it is today. Have you ever seen The Umbrellas of Cherbourg?
A movie? No, never seen it.
No? It came out 10 years ago. Catherine Deneuve. She's so beautiful in it. And the music, the costumes, the colors.
Huh.
It takes place in the naval port of Cherbourg.
That was a beachhead in Normandy.
It is set back when young men were conscripted to fight in the Algerian War.
The French government called the conflict a public order operation in northern Africa.
I was still a little girl then, but I can clearly remember one of my friend's older brothers going off to fight.
Yeah, national service is required in France.
The war splits up two young lovers. Director Jacques Demy's lyrics and Michel Legrand's music tore at my heart. I will never forget its wonderful melodies.
Are you okay?
It changes lives, changes fates. War is not a good thing.
For some reason, it strikes a chord to hear that coming from someone like you. Speaking of the Algerian War of Independence, you ever hear of the Day of the Jackal?
Ah, you mean the novel that was made into a movie last year? The OAS, a militant French underground group, plots to assassinate de Gaulle, hiring a hitman known as the Jackal. Readers know that de Gaulle was not killed, but it is still so exciting. If someone was going to try to eliminate me, I would hope they would be as thorough as the Jackal, to know everything about me without me suspecting a thing.
Oh, yeah?
I wonder if my birds feel the same way.
I wonder.
France conducted its first successful nuclear test in the Algerian Sahara in 1960.
A lot of French scientists took part in the Manhattan Project. They defected to America to escape wartime occupation.
Correct. And once the war was over, they returned to France and continued their own atomic research. President de Gaulle did not want to have to rely on the American nuclear umbrella for protection.
Thus making France the world's fourth nuclear power.
Some say the test success pacified the Algerian rebels. The civil war was undoubtedly held in check, but never have I equated nuclear weapons with peace. France has produced many philosophers over the years. Descartes, Bataille, Sartre, Baudrillard.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Sartre myself. He called Che Guevara the most complete man of the century, didn't he? Smart guy.
He does tend to sympathize with the left. And what else do you know about him?
That's it.
You know nothing else?
Nope.
Ooh la la! The man is one of the giants of existentialism, you know?
Existentialism? I've been meaning to look into that. Nothing more dangerous than sneaking in without first securing an exit.
No, existentialism. Sometimes I wonder if my English is not better than yours.
Sorry, I'm just not into philosophy.
Ah, is that so? I would imagine it might really enrich your life.
I'd rather take action now than spend time thinking about what we are or how we're supposed to live. I guess you could say I live my philosophy.
Interesting. That sounds like something Sartre would say.
Yeah?
He says we are born with no defined nature, and that we are free to make ourselves what we wish.
Free. So he was one of those devil-may-care kind of guys, huh?
No. Actually, he meant that because we are free to create our own life, we must take full responsibility for our actions. Man is condemned to be free, is how he put it.
Condemned to be free.
But then, others will take it upon themselves to define who you are.
I've been feeling that way lately. I keep telling people to call me Snake, but nobody seems to listen.
Sartre also says, hell is other people.
Hell. Well, we are outside of heaven.
Do you have an interest in the visual arts, Snake?
Not really. Please, no deep conversation.
But you have heard of Picasso, yes?
Yeah, I've heard the name.
Sadly, Monsieur Picasso, co-founder of Cubism, passed away in the south of France last year. France was his home, you know.
Huh? I thought he was born in Spain.
Do you know his full name?
Pablo Picasso. Anyone would know he's Spanish with a name like...
Huh. Shows what you know.
What do you mean?
Okay, here we go. Pablo Diego José Francisco de la Paula Juan Nepomuceno Maria de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso. What do you think? That was his full name.
Still, I don't see how...
A master of modern art. A genius who crafted over 100,000 works in various styles, spending the greater part of his life in France. The man is a part of our culture.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is of limited use in my field. But back to the point. Picasso was Spanish, right? Or am I missing something? He wasn't French, right? Right? Cecile.
What difference does it make? It does not matter if he was from Spain or from Mars. Picasso is Picasso. It does not change the fact that he lived in France, nor does it take away from his monumental legacy. Why do you care so much about where he was from, anyway? Whatever happened to the sans frontière part of Militaire sans frontière?
You started it. France was his name.
What was that?
Nothing.
I love it. Oh my god.
Tell me, Snake, do you ever put sweets in your rations?
Never thought about it before. Why?
Ah, I simply love them. French sweets are très délicieux. Everyone knows crepes, but there are also profiteroles, eclairs, madeleines, financiers. Then there's tarte tatin, and you can't forget Savarin. Oh, and millefeuille, crepes, blancmange.
Yeah, you already mentioned crepes.
Ah, soufflés, croquembouche, cannelle, Florentine, Queen Amagne, peach melbas.
Finished?
And macaroons. I love those the most. Macaroon Parisian are the best. They are so cute and colorful, and they contain meringue, so they melt right in your mouth.
Wow. I'd no idea macaroons were that popular in France, too.
What do you mean in France, too?
Macaroons are those coconut-flavored cookies, right?
Excuse you? Macaroons contain almond powder, not coconuts.
Don't they have peanuts in them? I've had them in Japan a few times. I thought they were called macarons.
Macarons? Some cheap imitation, I am sure. French macaroons have a long and distinguished history. They date back to the 16th century when Catherine de' Medici of Florence married into the French royal family. The story goes that her pâtissier shared the recipe after they arrived. That is a history of over 500 years.
So, they're originally from Italy then?
Well,
Don't macaroons come from Italy too?
look, I do not really think.
Keep in mind, macaron is almost identical to macaroni.
Well, that settles it.
I cannot believe this. To associate macaroons with macaroni? You, Monsieur Miller, are an insensible oaf.
Hey, why am I the bad guy? Come on, Cecile, wait! Cecile!
Hello? Snake? Mon chéri?
You've been drinking, Cecile?
Can't you please do something about this pest?
Who?
Monsieur Miller!
What's he done now?
Wine.
Wine?
He said he thought the soldiers might tire of having beer all the time. So he's brought in some wine instead. And then he gave me a bunch.
Well, that was nice of him.
But the past 2 years have been bad for French wine. Perhaps it is the bad weather we have had. But whatever the case, I told him the last thing you want to be drinking right now is French wine.
Well, California and Chile have good wine too.
But then he goes and stocks the pantry with nothing but French wine from 72. The stuff is a disaster. Then he says, "Come on, Cecile, have a taste of the old country." I had a terrible feeling about it, so I decided just to taste it at first, and then again, and then a few more times.
Took one for the team, huh? But when you do a tasting, don't you usually spit the wine out?
But bottle after bottle, nothing but garbage. Absolute garbage. Not one half-decent bottle in the whole lot. Taste of the old country, he says.
Sorry to hear that.
I cannot believe this. What will we do with all this wine?
The guys aren't too picky when it comes to taste.
You sound just like Monsieur Miller.
Huh?
When I complained, he simply said, "As long as it gets the job done." You people are such culinary savages. Allez tout vous faire voir. Somebody take me back to Paris, please.
I think you've had a little too much, Cecile.
Got played like a damn fiddle.
You seem like a very, how do I put this, uninhibited woman.
You think so? I am no different from other Parisian women. Not since May 1968.
May 1968? The general strike that almost brought down the president?
Right. But it was more than just a strike. It started with the student movement at Strasbourg University in '66. They did not want anything from the country, but instead sought reform at the school. That helped ignite a fire in the hearts of scores of dissatisfied young people. And the movement spread all over France. It was more than just opposition to Vietnam and the de Gaulle administration. People also called for free love and the breaking away from other old values. Looking back, I am not sure what the main goal really was. But whatever the case, It was more of a young people's movement than a strike or a protest.
So, it was like the hippies or something?
In some ways, perhaps. But we weren't blinded by mysticism, nor did we seek a return to nature.
I see. So, they wanted to retreat to their closed communes.
We tried to change the world. And in doing so, we learned that when everyone comes together, it can be done.
You had a lot more success. In America, hippies have just become a social problem, while I hear Japan's student movements crashed and burned.
I wonder what was different.
Good question. I'd like to know myself.
AI stands for artificial intelligence. It refers to a man-made machine possessing an intellect on par with that of a human being.
Is that even possible?
Possible. You've seen it with your own eyes. What the AI weapons are capable of. How Peace Walker carried out the boss's will in the end. No mere machine could ever choose to sacrifice itself like that.
I just can't see how a bunch of circuits and switches could have a will of its own.
It's called the ghost in the machine, Snake. And it exists.
What did you mean by the ghost in the machine?
Oh, that. It's a term coined by the philosopher Gilbert Ryle. You've heard of Descartes, yes?
I think, therefore I am.
That is the one. Descartes espoused the dualistic theory of mind and body. He believed that our thinking minds exist in a separate dimension from our bodies, which are governed by the laws of physics. But if that were true, then couldn't you say that a mechanical body, inhabited by a ghost mind, is a human being? Ryle criticized Descartes on those grounds, saying such a thing surely wouldn't be human.
Why'd you bring it up?
I wasn't thinking of Ryle in particular when I said it. I simply thought that if a person is composed of a machine and a ghost, perhaps the opposite is true as well. Perhaps, by placing a ghost inside a machine, we could, in effect, give birth to a new person.
And that was your idea for the boss AI?
The moment you ripped the memory board out, the mammal pod ceased to function. It should have been dead. And yet, Peace Walker righted itself, singing a song of peace. I couldn't help but feel that her soul had come to inhabit Peace Walker.
Let's say, hypothetically, there really was an intelligent machine. How would you prove it? What's the difference between a high-level computer and an AI?
It depends on what you choose to define as intelligence. For example, Snake, listen to my voice talking to you now. Suppose it were an AI.
Say what?
What if the living, breathing me sitting here drinking tea and talking to you were actually an AI, programmed to simulate my thoughts and my voice?
You're nuts.
No, I'm not. You couldn't prove I was a real human being, could you?
It'd be... No.
So if an AI is so advanced you can't tell it from the real thing, wouldn't you call that intelligence?
I'm not quite convinced.
But that's only one way to look at it. It's roughly how Dr. Turing explained artificial intelligence. The test I described is called the Turing test, in his honor.
Yeah, well, sounds like a bad joke to me. That singing monster of yours put me through hell. If I never meet one again, it'll be too soon.
Shame. And I was about to let an AI take my place in our conversation.
Don't even think about it.
Dr. Alan Turing is known as the father of computer science. It was he who formulated the basic theory of AI. During the war, he worked for GC and CS.
The government's cryptology school. The one that broke Enigma.
The very same. Without him, they might never have been able to decipher the Germans' code. But then, they arrested him.
Why? Weren't his some of the greatest contributions to winning the war?
Homosexuality was a crime in Britain back then, and he was gay. I know exactly how crushed he was. I feel it's my duty to further his AI research.
Like the Imitation Game, huh?
Ha! You know it then. The clue that inspired the Turing test came from a trifling little party game. You exchange written notes with another person behind a screen and try to guess their gender, whether they're a woman or a man, pretending to be a woman. It's surprisingly difficult to tell the difference. Man or woman, human or machine. What do the differences even mean? Dr. Turing was fascinated by the differences between men and women. Perhaps that's what led him to formulate his test.
What if you hadn't used the boss as the model for the AI?
What do you mean?
If the end goal is MAD, it seems like there are more suitable models out there. A military chief of staff, or a nuclear technician, even the president.
Patriotism, leadership, good judgment. Each of those qualities is essential when deciding whether to launch a nuke. And she had them all.
Wouldn't the president, too?
It's not enough. She had the will for it.
Will?
Let me explain, Snake. Peace Walker is a standalone weapon. It has to decide on its own whether or not to launch a nuke. It can't turn to anyone else for advice. It can't do its job if it's not prepared to take sole responsibility for the fate of the world. I know of no other human being who could bear that burden.
That's it?
There were technical considerations, of course. To begin with, the female brain is a more appropriate model for an AI.
Oh, wait, the female brain? What do you mean by that, modeling your AI after the female brain?
Snake,
Here we go.
What is the human mind capable of that a computer is not?
Being lazy?
Interesting response. And not incorrect. But the answer I was looking for was empathy.
Empathy?
The ability to feel for others, to be more precise. Love for a child. Pity for the weak. Grief for the dead. All of these are particularly well developed in the female brain.
That's stretching it a little.
On the contrary, it's perfectly reasonable. The male brain, on the other hand, may be well suited for systematic thinking, but it's less able to empathize. In that sense, it's closer to a computer. So if your objective is to make the AI think more like a human...
You need to teach it how to empathize like a woman.
The novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, deals with this very problem. In the book, an empathy test is used to distinguish between machines and human beings. As machines become more and more advanced, our society will gradually become more and more systematic. Our cities will teem with robot-like people, unable to feel for others. We cannot allow that to happen. Computers must learn to empathize. The same goes for humans, only more so.
Well, what about yourself? You make these claims, and yet I've never seen you empathize with a real person.
It's true. Until now, I was a prisoner of death. It was my intention to die upon the completion of Mammal's development. She was my one reason to live.
But you changed your mind.
I did. Because she taught me the dignity of living. My eyes are open now. I want to go on living and seeing real people.
Huh. I see. Is it really necessary to make machines think like humans? I think empathy would get in the way of making the decision to retaliate.
I admit, human thought may not be fully compatible with level-headed decision-making. Then again, is there such a thing as non-human thought? The moment computers became so advanced that they could calculate faster than human beings, a new dream was born.
Dream?
If we can create a machine that can do advanced mathematics, why can't we create one that can think like a human? The 19th century author, Auguste Villiers-L'Isle-Adam, wrote a book called Tomorrow's Eve, in which the protagonist fashions an artificial woman to serve as his ideal lover. I believe the idea of creating an intelligent being with our own hands is one of mankind's oldest dreams.
So AI is a product of people's dreams, then?
Not only AI, civilization itself is the process by which mankind gives form to its dreams. But not all dreams are pleasant. Some have expressed fears about non-human intelligence.
Yeah, they want the benefits with none of the risks.
Some fear that intelligent robots might rise up and rebel against their human masters, as portrayed by the Czech writer Karel Čapek in his Rossum's Universal Robots, or in the 1970 film Colossus, the Forbin Project, where intelligent supercomputers in the US and the Soviet Union join forces and plot to subjugate humanity. Isaac Asimov offered a specific solution to these fears with his 3 laws of robotics, which demonstrated that while robot intelligence is different from that of humans, the two can coexist. In order to endow computers with intelligence, we must first have a thorough understanding of what intelligence is, and that is where the need for a practical and feasible expert system arises.
So what's an expert system?
The AI housed within Peace Walker began development as such a system. An expert system is a type of proxy program by which a computer makes decisions as an expert would. The program, Mycin, for example, is a system that decides which kind of antibiotics to prescribe. The system asks the patient a series of questions to narrow down the range of appropriate drugs.
So you program Peace Walker to prescribe live nuclear warheads instead of penicillin.
What I realized, however, was that a simple expert system wasn't up to the task.
You need more than expertise to launch a nuke.
Indeed, expertise is a necessary prerequisite, but insufficient on its own. Deciding to launch a retaliatory strike requires consideration of a wider range of factors. In such a scenario, the entire global situation becomes the criterion for making a decision.
Makes sense. You screw up the prescription and the whole world goes into anaphylactic shock.
A weak AI that only has a limited range of knowledge upon which to base its decisions won't cut it. Therefore, I had the AI study the boss's thought patterns, thus creating a true expert system. A strong AI.
You couldn't leave the world in the hands of something with anything less than absolute worldview.
I could have built a simple expert system in no time at all. Say, how would you like a system that decides which guns you should equip according to the mission's parameters?
I'll pass. I'm not going to leave my life up to somebody else's judgment. Especially not a machine.
With current technology, AI are inevitably enormous in size. But as circuit integration continues to advance, they will become even smaller. As small as human brains, and perhaps smaller than that. And in the meantime, robotics will continue to advance as well, to the point where we can create androids, robots that resemble humans. And then...
And then what?
Well, I don't need to spell it out for you, do I?
Don't tell me you're thinking of making an android imitation of the boss.
Surely the thought has crossed your mind as well, of one day being reunited with her?
Enough. I don't want any part of it.
I see. I didn't mean to offend you. In reality, AI is more likely to evolve in the opposite direction anyway.
The opposite direction? What does that mean?
More and more, AI are becoming systems that specialize in mass information processing, without human intelligence, thought, or emotion. A machine that has no individualism or sense of self, but rather behaves as a collective, exhibiting the qualities of a society.
Like a beehive?
Yes, it aggregates data collected by individuals and determines how the collective will act, just as honeybees travel between the hive and flowers. The key to achieving that will be networking AI together.
I don't know how to say this, but that kind of gives me the creeps.
But if your goal is to control society, it's the better model to use. It lets you filter data, disseminate only what you want disseminated. Of course, I myself have no interest in an AI without a shred of life to it.
opposite direction. What does that mean?
More and more AI are becoming systems that specialize in mass information processing, without human intelligence, thought, or emotion. A machine that has no individualism or sense of self, but rather behaves as a collective, exhibiting the qualities of a society.
Like a beehive.
Yes, it aggregates data collected by individuals and determines how the collective will act, just as honeybees travel between the hive and flowers. The key to achieving that will be networking AI together.
I don't know how to say this, but that kind of gives me the creeps.
But if your goal is to control society, it's the better model to use. It lets you filter data, disseminate only what you want disseminated. Of course, I myself have no interest in an AI without a shred of life to it.
Earlier, you called the mammal pod a butterfly. Not a pupa or a cocoon, but an imago.
Yes, the AI that came before the mammal pod were works in progress.
Works in progress.
They were enough to keep the frame running, but not enough to make decisions about nuclear retaliation. They weren't quite complete. They were pupae. Only when I added the boss's data did the AI take on its true form, becoming a butterfly and taking flight.
And that's why the nose art on Peace Walker was a butterfly.
I gave the mammal AI the code name BS Imago. BS is short for boss.
Huey called that gigantic unmanned chopper a chrysalis. Is that another one of your AI code names?
Yes, you're referring to the TJ Chrysalis 6000. There's also the GW Pupa 5000, the TR Cocoon 7000.
I get it. A hovercraft type and a treaded type. And those letters on the front. TJ, GW, or whatever. Those are initials?
Correct. The initials of the American presidents whose faces are carved into Mount Rushmore.
Then you're missing one.
I assigned that one to the reptile pod. AL Aurelia 8000.
Aurelia. Another word for chrysalis. A pupa just before it emerges.
All of the initials, except for BS, were of Coldman's choosing. I chose mine from the storied ranks of British royalty. MS, AV, EW.
What do those stand for?
You can't guess. Why, Mary Stuart, Alexandrina Victoria, and Elizabeth Windsor.
All queens. Of course.
Are you familiar with the film 2001: A Space Odyssey?
I've heard of it, but...
Of course not. I didn't expect you to be cultured enough to appreciate such things.
Yeah, thanks. Anyway...
2001 features an AI called HAL, a highly advanced system that controls an exploration spacecraft. It can converse with people, and even play chess.
Now where have I heard that before?
The way HAL was portrayed was truly superb.
How so?
HAL is given secret orders that not even the ship's captain knows about. Naturally, he's not allowed to divulge them to the crew. The stress of it causes HAL to crack.
Crack?
Go crazy. Though there are those who interpret it differently. One by one, HAL kills off the crew until the captain finally shuts it down. The film offers amazing insights into AI, their growth, their utility, their faults, and their fear of death.
Well, you must have found it useful in your research then.
Must you always be so utilitarian? It doesn't matter whether or not it's useful. What matters is that it inspired me.
Then it was useful.
Never mind. The portrayal of Hal wasn't the only wonderful thing about the film. It was full of hints about the future of human evolution. Truly, a film for the ages.
For now, yeah. Yeah, for now, I'm done with Dark Souls 2. For now.
Strangelove, when did you and the boss first meet?
Did she ever tell you about what she saw in space?
Yeah.
I saw the same thing along with her. The Soviets beat America into space with Sputnik, and so America rushed to be first in manned spaceflight. NASA used her as their top secret guinea pig, launching her deep into the cold blackness of space. I took part in the project as a scientist.
You were there with her?
Yes, for a brief time. We were one and the same, she and I. We sought each other out, completed each other. Did you know that inside every woman there's a universe? And that we are able to sense this in each other? We connected because of our empathetic female brains. As time went on, I began to have doubts about offering such a noble soul as sacrifice. Why did she have to... The flight test was a narrow success, and she miraculously made it back alive. But her mind and body were horribly mangled, and there was nothing I could do for her. We were no longer one and the same. She went away, and I, having nothing else to live for, immersed myself in AI research, hoping that no one would ever have to make her sacrifice again.
I never knew.
It's not really worth knowing. We were ships passing in the night, that's all. Perhaps someday I'll tell you the long version, if you're interested.
That was quite a warm welcome you gave me at the base in Costa Rica.
Sorry about that. But I simply had to know.
The boss's final act.
Yes, by inputting her thoughts and actions into the AI, I was imbuing it with her mind. The only thing I couldn't understand was her final act.
Operation Snake Eater.
Official history says she betrayed her homeland and defected to the enemy and was killed by you. But it didn't make sense. The boss would be the last person on Earth to betray her country. It was logically inconsistent.
It was, wasn't it?
That internal inconsistency prevented the AI from activating properly. Just as Hal malfunctioned in the film, I understood the reasoning, but I had to have proof. Proof of her final act, her true intentions, one way or another.
So you tried to squeeze it out of me, huh?
As a matter of fact, I did. Your silence was the very answer I was looking for.
That white horse the boss rode.
The Andalusian, yes.
How'd it get to Costa Rica?
I went looking for it. It was her final witness. Even if it couldn't speak, I found it and brought it here.
Where? I thought for sure it'd be blown to ashes by those MiGs.
I searched the ends of the earth for that horse, and found it at last in a horse market in Britain.
Britain? Are you saying it came all the way over the Ural Mountains, through Europe, and across the English Channel?
Who knows, really? Perhaps someone took it there.
Wait, the thought never occurred to you that it might be a different Andalusian that only looks the same?
I can't prove it. Or rather, I couldn't.
What do you mean?
You should know best of all. That horse wouldn't let anyone ride it. And believe me, I nearly killed myself trying. The only one it allowed on its back was you. That was the proof. Though I hate to admit it.
And to think, I ran it to its death.
But in that last run, it regained the glory of its youth, using the last of its strength to pursue its former master. Any horse would wish for such a fine end.
What do you make of Peace Walker's final act?
I recreated her thought patterns exactly. It was exactly what she would have done. The world's most empathetic mind weighed the past, the future, and the entire world, and decided not to retaliate. Merely knowing that is enough for me.
So, what you're saying is, we don't need deterrence to have peace?
I didn't say that. What's important is that we wish for peace. MSF needs a way to protect itself from the might of nations. Survival requires pragmatic thought and action. But you must still retain your ideals. If the gap between reality and those ideals ever leads you to lose them, I doubt MSF will survive.
What do you make of Peace Walker's final act?
I recreated her thought patterns exactly. It was exactly what she would have done. The world's most empathetic mind weighed the past, the future, and the entire world, and decided not to retaliate. Merely knowing that is enough for me.
So, what you're saying is, we don't need deterrence to have peace?
I didn't say that. What's important is that we wish for peace. MSF needs a way to protect itself from the might of nations. Survival requires pragmatic thought and action. But you must still retain your ideals. If the gap between reality and those ideals ever leads you to lose them, I doubt MSF will survive.
Strangelove. Is that a code name?
No, just a nickname. Don't tell me you don't recognize it. From Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. It's a film that came out in 1964. A dark comedy about the absurdity of nuclear deterrence.
You were in a movie?
No, stupid. I got my nickname because of that movie.
Why? Because you look like the doctor in the movie?
No, that Dr. Strangelove was a man.
So?
Back when I was at ARPA, I kept a photo of the boss on my desk. I was totally engrossed in my research and showed no interest in the opposite sex. Plus, I had a photo of a woman on my desk. The fools around me turned it into a cruel taunt, calling me Strangelove. Even for a bunch of shut-ins who never went out to the cinema, that title seemed to ring true with them. Anyhow, in their eyes, homosexuality was something strange. They were incapable of seeing things outside the lens of their own standards. Being strange means you have your own unique point of view. I rather considered it an honor.
So, you were with ARPA before you came here, huh?
Yes, back then it was really the only place I could make a living from my AI research.
And before that?
I started out at NASA. That's where I met her.
When Boss went into space?
Yes. It was that incident that turned me away from aerospace engineering. Space is entirely too hazardous a place for human beings. That was why I felt an immediate need to develop AI. As it turned out, rockets later became much safer, and mankind reached the surface of the moon. In any event, it was a hollow Cold War victory. When you get down to it, a nuclear missile is just a rocket with a nuclear warhead strapped to it. Thus, taking the initiative in the space race was tantamount to a military show of force.
But the budgetary strain was too big for Washington or Moscow to handle.
Yes, and then there was the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Vietnam War, and then came détente. Having leapt ahead of the Soviet Union with its moon landing, America shut down the Apollo program in '72. It was around then that ARPA was downsized and renamed DARPA, the D standing for Defense. With few prospects for continuing my AI research, Coldman's invitation was a godsend. It was also a chance to have them collect data on her.
The end result being this mess.
But we did learn valuable from her. The nobility of peace.
Why'd you agree to come here? To Mother Base?
You intrigued me.
Me? Hold on. You're not planning on modeling your next AI after me.
Not a bad idea, but I have no intention of ever again attempting to transplant human thought into machines.
Oh, that's a relief.
You are the man who inherited the boss's will. You're gathering people around you, even now, shaping them, building a new organization. I'd like to see how it turns out.
You're not planning to go back to AI research?
I never said such a thing. Of course my work will continue.
Here?
In my eyes, the growth of MSF as an organization is analogous to the development of the nervous system. The way you become intertwined, stimulate each other, branch out in new directions. It's really quite inspirational.
Interesting way to put it.
Of course, I intend to repay you for your hospitality. The fruits of my research will be at your disposal. Why not assign me to the R&D team? I promise you won't be disappointed.
You know, that ID card I got from Huey wouldn't let me into the lab.
Of course not. I deactivated it.
Why?
As though I'd let him into my lab.
Oh, you don't seem to care for him much, even though you two are in the same field.
Oh, please. For starters, I can't stand that wishy-washy attitude of his. If he's got something to say to me, he should be a man and come say it in person, not write some furtive letter.
But if his card doesn't work, how's he supposed to...
And another thing, the way he always demeans himself. Every other sentence begins with, I could be wrong, but... Why can't he just do what he does and be confident about it?
Well, there was the thing about his dissertation being plagiarized.
The real problem is he doesn't have a whit of independence in him. In Costa Rica, and even back at NASA, he was always following people around, asking if there was some way he could help. Why doesn't he stop his whining, take a stand, and face up to me?
I think I know how he feels.
And to top it all off, he seems to enjoy referring to himself by that nickname I gave him. I simply don't get it. How can he be so submissive?
So, Huey was a nickname you gave him.
That's right. I took it from the name of a drone in the science fiction film Silent Running.
Drone?
It's a type of worker robot. The way he follows people, just waiting for them to boss him around, is so similar. I couldn't help myself. Oh, it's an American film directed by Douglas Trumbull, the man who did the special effects for 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Imagine that. A scientist who likes science fiction.
And that's not all.
There's more.
He's a man.
Hang on. I seem to remember you saying he should be more of a man.
Yes. Well, he is an awfully good scientist. Without his reptile pod, my mammal pod wouldn't function, just as the cerebrum can't exist without the cerebellum and the brainstem. He did a fine job of designing it. I'll give him that.
That sounded suspiciously like praise.
It's merely an objective observation. I like people who possess the will to move forward. I have no time for those who refuse to take control of their lives. Until he does, my opinion remains the same.
So, you and Cecile seem to be enjoying yourselves back at that lab.
What are you insinuating? I only kept her because I didn't want our secret to be known.
And the personal baths? You could have left her in there alone and locked the door from the outside.
Yes, well, she seemed anxious, so I...
Now, why would she be anxious?
She was beautiful. I was only admiring her beauty.
She was terrified.
I never meant her any harm. She knew that. I know she did.
But she felt like she was in enough danger to run away.
No matter what I did, if Coldman found her, she would have been... You're right. The truth is, I wanted to save her. But not if it meant forestalling the completion of Mammal.
So you made it easy for her to escape?
Do you really think I am that soft? I'll admit security wasn't exactly tight. it wouldn't have been difficult for her to escape from the building.
Seemed like she had a rougher time after she got out.
At any rate, I never did anything to her to deserve any blame. Is that clear?
Okay. I believe you.
Huey's probably mentioned this, but just to be clear, there's a limit to the parts we can produce here at Mother Base. Therefore, I've built Zeke's AI using memory boards you pulled from other AI weapons.
Will that work?
In the human brain, individual functions are spread across multiple regions. The same is true of AI. Multiple parts sharing the same function interlink to strengthen that function. For example, the more sensor memory boards you have, the greater Zeke's search and detect capabilities will be. Install more movement boards, and you'll increase its mobility.
Meaning the AI's capabilities change depending on how much memory we give it?
Exactly. The more boards you install, the more powerful a function will be.
How's the Zeke AI different from Peace Walker's?
Zeke's AI isn't a replica of the human thought process. It isn't programmed to make decisions about nuclear retaliation. On the other hand, it is capable of highly independent action in combat when given orders from a pilot. It can protect infantry, destroy the enemy, and, if ordered...
launch a nuke.
Let us hope it never comes to that.
My sentiments exactly. How's the Zeke AI different from Peace Walker's?
Zeke's AI isn't a replica of the human thought process. It isn't programmed to make decisions about nuclear retaliation. On the other hand, it is capable of highly independent action in combat when given orders from a pilot. It can protect infantry, destroy the enemy, and, if ordered...
launch a nuke.
Let us hope it never comes to that.
My sentiments exactly.
Number of warheads detected by the DEW line.
57.
Number of MIRVs included.
Minimum 29, maximum 35.
Target region.
United States, East Coast.
Estimated time of re-entry.
2048 Zulu.
President selected attack option.
Unknown.
The president is dead.
Unknown. Communication has been lost.
I select Offutt Air Force Base as my target.
Offutt? But that's a U.S. base. What on earth do you mean?
Based on the projected number of incoming warheads, Washington, D.C. is presumed destroyed. The president is most likely dead. The U.S. government's control lost.
I realize that. So why not retaliate?
With both sides destroyed, global anarchy would ensue. Recovery would be difficult. The United States' nuclear strike capability must therefore be neutralized in order to preserve the communist bloc, where government remains largely intact.
You're siding with the enemy. You can't be serious.
Tell me, how do you define enemy? There are no borders in this world.
The same conclusion again and again. Where is the flaw? All right, let's try something else. Commencing test.
Understood.
You're crossing a suspension bridge.
Is this my mission?
Yes, your destination is the other side. The bridge is wide enough for only one person to pass at a time. A man is approaching from the opposite side. He's carrying a gun.
I shoot him.
Suppose he's your husband.
I shoot him.
In self-defense?
To spare him the grief. One must die, and one must live.
Next question. Your father asks you to fix the roof and mow the lawn. When you climb the ladder onto the roof, the ladder is taken away.
I fix the roof.
And when you're finished?
I jump down.
You'll break more than bones at this height.
I see no need to change my decision. I have not finished mowing the lawn. I must remain loyal to the mission.
Next. There is a snake in the bushes. It is poisonous. I need you to get rid of it.
I chase it back to its nest.
You can't. The snake's too vicious. It's already killed many people.
I chase it away.
It will bite you unless you kill it.
Go home. Kill me. Kill me now.
Why not kill the snake? Your mission is to get rid of it. Is this what you call loyalty? What are you loyal to? Country? Ideology? Feelings?
I am loyal to myself.
Who's there?
Who's that? Intruder!
I'm about to leave for Costa Rica, a place completely unfamiliar to me, and on a top-secret mission for the CIA, no less. No guarantees I'll come back alive. Might even get rubbed out by the CIA itself. So I'm leaving behind this record. For her sake. For the boss's honor. Ever since I was a child, I've loved to look up at the night sky. I'd go outside after sunset and drink in the cold air. The moon, Venus, so many stars floating on the edge of infinity. In Manchester, it wasn't very often you saw the night sky in all its star-studded glory, but it was enough to stir a deep longing inside me. Even as others cowered beneath Nazi air raids, I was out there, watching the skies, dreaming of one day reaching the heavens. There were, of course, more practical concerns. My skin was incredibly sensitive. Even the slightest bit of sun would turn it an angry shade of red. Playing outside during the day was completely out of the question. Naturally, I hardly ever had a chance to play with other children my age. But I never felt lonely for it. Their way of thinking was irrational, making them simple, easy to predict. The boys would talk of tanks and aeroplanes and creepy, crawly bugs. The girls of pretty dresses, glass beads, and tea and cakes. Of boys they liked. I never had much to say on such matters. The curious thing is, adults really aren't all that different. They're simple, capricious, especially men. As they get older, their heads fill with thoughts of women, and more women. Thankfully, I always did have a head for mathematics. When I was about 10, I visited Dr. Turing, who lived nearby. We'd sit and discuss mathematical logic. The lights were always on at his house, even in the dead of night. Theoretically, he'd say, there's no algorithm that a computing machine couldn't reproduce. Dr. Turing wasn't foolish like other men. Although I didn't find out why until later, after he died. The time will come, he'd say, when computers will be able to think for themselves. That idea rocked me to my core. My aptitude for mathematics brought me closer to the stars. I breezed through school, then went to America for university. While I was studying at Caltech, NASA was established. I signed up in a heartbeat. I was a pretty good computer engineer at the time, and NASA needed skills like mine. The work was enjoyable. Even though I'd given up on going into space myself, it was a pleasure just being a part of it all. I was assigned to Project Mercury, America's effort to compete with the Soviets in manned spaceflight. 7 men were chosen as pilot candidates for the program, becoming heroes overnight. People called them the Mercury 7. The project made good progress, more or less. We had all the funds and materials we needed. After countless hours of analysis, we even had plans for something on par with Sputnik. We thought it'd only be a matter of time before we caught up with the Russians. They'd sent a dog into orbit and brought it back safely to Earth. But NASA top brass dismissed that success as a fluke. The Americans recovered their re-entry capsules at sea, but the only ocean bordering the Soviet Union is the Arctic, so their re-entry capsules had to make impact on land. A dog was one thing, but human spaceflight would still take some time, or so we thought. At the end of January 1961, we successfully put a chimpanzee named Ham into orbit. He returned to Earth as healthy as ever. NASA was giddy with success. It was then that a new woman showed up for duty. She was a backup pilot and advisor. She was beautiful, with blonde hair, strong mouth, and a steely gaze. But there was something else in those eyes, a twinkle of something warmer, of affection. It was the boss. She took one look at us in our revelry and murmured, "Savor this joy today, because tomorrow you'll have to face the truth." And she was right. The next day, our project schedule was accelerated. We'd received new information that the Soviets were mere months away from putting a man into space. The brass had misjudged the Russians. We couldn't afford to allow the shock of another Sputnik. Somehow, we had to get a man into space before the Russians did. It was an utterly impossible task. We'd only just put our first chimp up. With a human on board, failure was not an option, especially if it were one of the Mercury 7 Golden Boys. And on top of that, the brass wanted to put a window in the spacecraft. The pilot wouldn't be a test animal this time, they said, and when this hero came back alive and well, they wanted him to describe what he'd seen. It was madness. Adding a window to our existing spacecraft would leave it unable to handle the stress, not to mention the problem of shielding the occupant from cosmic rays. But the boss rose to the task, and splendidly. She claimed to be a layman when it came to space, but caught on keenly to new ideas and concepts. She was demanding, of herself and of others. She seemed rather cold-hearted at times, but I was smitten. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was wise. Her mind was thoroughly rational, and yet no matter how I tried, I could never predict her actions. It was easy for me to assume that her judgments were drawn from an enormous base of knowledge. Quite simply, her life experiences were more diverse, more intense than anyone else's. To me, they seemed boundless in their breadth. In her, I saw a reflection of the night sky. Perhaps because I too was a woman, she and I became close. I couldn't go out in the sun, but she lit up my life. Her light was soft, like that of the moon. I was so happy. With her unerring guidance, the project steadily regained its footing. But one issue remained, the pilot's safety. When the day came to choose a pilot, the Mercury 7 just quietly walked out. Who could blame them? It was far too great a risk to take. Even if they'd volunteered, NASA would never have let them go. They were national heroes, basking in the media spotlight. There was no way they'd be sent on such a mission. The conference room was silent. Then, slowly, she raised her hand, almost as if acting out a scene from a movie. I spoke out against her going, submitting a report stating the ray shielding was inadequate. But the brass's response was brusque. She's already been exposed to a nuclear test in Nevada. She's the perfect candidate. It was completely irrational. Repeated exposure to radiation would only increase the danger. But the government was still reeling from the Soviet success with Sputnik. There was no hope of getting a rational response. They were simply too panicked. People can be so obtuse when it comes to things they can't see. I, however, understood all too well. Just as invisible ultraviolet radiation scorched my skin, heavy particle radiation from space would cause irreparable harm to human tissue. In a word, she was expendable. It was during the boss's pre-flight checkup that I noticed something strange on the X-ray of her skull. Part of the right hemisphere of her brain was damaged. It seemed inexplicable, given her keen intelligence and amazing physical prowess, but there it was, and I decided to report it. I hoped that perhaps my discovery of a physical defect would result in the flight being cancelled. But as I went to make my report, she stopped me. "Why?" I demanded. "How can you let yourself be their guinea pig?" Ignoring my protests, she took me up to the roof of the lab. The night sky was ablaze with stars. It was there that I learned how she had wounded her head. 1943, Los Alamos. She was serving with the Special Forces when she received new orders. A German spy had infiltrated the Manhattan Project, which aimed to build the world's first atomic bomb. She was to eliminate him. His name was John von Neumann, a mathematician with superhuman computational abilities and the designer of the explosive lens. The Manhattan Project was a top national priority, security accordingly tight. The guards couldn't be allowed to know what was going on. She'd have to slip past them and make the death look like an accident. It should have been an easy enough mission. But just before the operation, she received unexpected news. A new life was growing inside her. She was overcome with joy, and for one brief moment, it clouded her judgment. She accidentally got into a shootout with the guards, and without thinking, protected her belly. She was shot in the head. The bullet only grazed the surface of her brain, but the tissue around the wound was destroyed, leaving her in a coma. She wasn't given much chance of recovery, but 3 months later, she woke up. Within 6, she was able to move around as if nothing had happened. It was functional compensation. The other parts of her brain took over for the part that was lost. It made logical sense, but such a full recovery was nothing short of a miracle. Perhaps her superhuman willpower made it possible. Or perhaps my body knew it had to survive for the sake of my unborn child. She smiled as she said that. I understand how she must have felt. Some have taken to calling me Ms. Left Lobe, she said, because I'll do anything for the mission. She was tough, yes, but she had feelings too. I knew that better than anyone else. As it turned out, von Neumann wasn't the spy. The assassination order was a deliberate bit of misinformation planted by the Russians. She had been deceived. The Eastern and Western camps were united on one point: opposition to the Nazis. The Allies needed to develop that bomb before Hitler did. But in looking ahead, the Russians found the Manhattan Project's progress a little too quick for their liking. Mass production of a uranium bomb, like the one that was eventually dropped on Hiroshima, would be difficult from a material perspective. But a plutonium bomb, once perfected, could be mass-produced, and eventually even miniaturized. And Moscow did not like the idea of America having that kind of head start. Explosive lens technology was critical to the plutonium design. So the plan was to get rid of its pioneer, von Neumann. And when that plot came to light, the US and the Soviet Union parted ways for good. It was one of the rare cold nights in Florida. She put her arm gently around my shivering shoulders. As I listened to her voice, I was wrapped in her soothing scent. I felt as if I were dreaming. Even in failure, she seemed perfect. Oddly enough, the failed assassination attempt helped preserve America's edge. A true super genius, von Neumann went on to make his mark in numerous fields outside of the Manhattan Project. Economic game theory, stored program computing. Almost all computers today use stored programs, the so-called von Neumann architecture. His death would have set back computing 10 years, and I wouldn't be at NASA doing research. I wouldn't have been there in her arms that night. I thanked the fates for giving me that chance. But then she said something unexpected. I should have killed von Neumann when I had the chance. Why, I asked. Wasn't the order a Soviet plot? I looked up at her as she began to explain. Yes, von Neumann was innocent, and killing the innocent is a grave crime. But I can't help but wonder, had I succeeded, what would the world be like now? Even without von Neumann, the explosive lens would have eventually been developed. Von Neumann architecture, too. But she seemed to believe that if progress had been put off for a few years, then perhaps East and West would have had a chance to work hand in hand. I'd never considered such a possibility, but her tone was confident, assertive. It was as if she intended to make the two superpowers shake hands herself. The explosive lens was developed too early, spawning a Cold War and an endless nuclear arms race, she continued. That mission sprung from deceit, but maybe it was divine providence too. It was like she was speaking to her own child. Her large, warm hand was on my head. I failed the mission because I let the mother in me take over. I should have killed him, no matter how great the guilt. If I'd killed him, I might not have prevented Hiroshima, but maybe I could have saved everyone in Nagasaki. I looked up at her and saw her looking up too, up at the starry sky. Her face showed only deep remorse. It was as if she'd convinced herself that she alone was responsible for creating this twisted world. But that's no reason for you to sacrifice yourself for this. I knew I'd never dissuade her, and yet I still clung to hope. I know you're concerned, and I thank you, but I have to be loyal to the end. And then she smiled at me. Loyal to the end. Loyal to what? I asked. But she didn't answer.
Enter simulation date.
August 24th.
Location.
Selinoyarsk, USSR.
Mission.
Support a covert agent whose objective is the rescue of a nuclear weapons scientist.
Who is the agent?
Your student. Your most beloved.
Acknowledged. Define current mission progress.
With your help, the agent has successfully made contact with the target. All that's left is to wait for recovery. Now, deduce the best course of action.
I take the scientist away from the agent.
What for?
As a gift when I defect.
Why are you defecting?
To reform my special forces unit with my former comrades in arms.
No, I don't want to know your objective. I'm asking for the reason. Why are you betraying your country?
I do not defect in order to betray America. Betrayal is merely the outcome of that defection.
Response time is always slower here. Perhaps she lacks confidence in her judgment. You're a hero in the West. Why should the Soviets trust you?
In addition to the scientist, I provide them with a portable nuclear warhead in order to win the favor of a Russian GRU officer.
And then you launched it.
Launched? The nuke? Me?